The Cleveland Browns just made the most dangerous bet in franchise history. 2 quarterbacks, 1 roster, and a fan base that has been burned so many times they can smell smoke before the fire even starts. When the draft ended, everyone assumed they knew the script. Gabriel would lead. Shador Sanders would learn. Simple, clean, predictable. But what happened next flipped everything sideways. Within days of training camp opening, whispers started spreading through facility hallways. Something wasn't matching the original plan. The quarterback drafted later was making the quarterback drafted earlier look uncomfortable. Not through trash talk, not through drama, just through pure, undeniable performance. Receivers started running sharper routes for one guy. Coaches started watching one guy longer. And the internet started asking questions nobody wanted to answer yet. This isn't just about 2 rookies fighting for a job. This is about legacy, pressure, perception, and proving everybody wrong. One quarterback carried the weight of being overlooked despite doing everything right. The other carried the weight of a famous last name that made people doubt everything he accomplished. Cleveland wanted a franchise quarterback. They might have accidentally drafted 2, and now only one can survive. Nobody saw this coming. Not the analysts, not the fans, definitely not the rest of the league. When the Cleveland Browns walked into the 2025 draft, everyone expected them to address the quarterback position. Years of disappointment demanded it. Recycled veterans and failed experiments had drained the patience of an entire city. This was supposed to be the reset. The moment Cleveland finally got it right. But instead of picking one quarterback and building around him, the Browns did something that raised eyebrows across every front office in football. They drafted 2. Gabriel came off the board first. Higher pick, more expected. The kind of selection that usually signals a clear plan. He was the safe choice on paper. A transfer portal success story who had bounced from program to program, improving each time, learning new systems, proving he could adapt. Oregon became his showcase. The stats were solid. The wins piled up. The tape showed a quarterback who made smart decisions under pressure. Cleveland saw a floor they could trust. A guy who wouldn't lose games through reckless mistakes. Someone who could manage the offense while the defense carried the load. In a franchise haunted by quarterback disasters, that kind of reliability felt valuable. Then the second pick happened, and everything got complicated. Shador Sanders. The name alone triggered reactions before anyone even watched his film. Son of Deion Sanders, raised in football royalty. Cameras following him since he could throw a spiral. For years, the conversation around Shador had nothing to do with his actual ability. It was always about his father, always about the circus, always about whether he earned anything or inherited everything. Critics called him a product of favoritism. They pointed to Colorado's offensive system and claimed it inflated his numbers. They questioned whether he could handle NFL speed without his father designing protections around him. The doubt was loud, constant, unforgiving. But the Browns saw something different on film. They saw arm talent that jumped off the screen. They saw poise that didn't match his age. They saw a kid who had been doubted his entire life and kept showing up anyway. That combination intrigued them enough to spend another pick. The front office probably imagined a clean timeline. Gabriel starts. Sanders develops. Maybe by year 2 or 3, the younger quarterback pushes for the job. Competition stays friendly. Growth happens naturally. No drama. No controversy. Just 2 professionals improving together. That timeline lasted about 72 hours into camp. From the moment both quarterbacks stepped onto the practice field, the energy shifted. Gabriel arrived expecting to be the alpha. He had earned that expectation through years of grinding, through transfers that could have broken his confidence, but instead sharpened it, through proving doubters wrong at every stop. He walked into Cleveland believing this was his team to lead. Shador arrived with something different. Not arrogance, not entitlement, just a quiet certainty that unsettled everyone watching. He didn't demand attention, he commanded it. Every throw looked intentional. Every movement looked controlled. He wasn't trying to win the room, he was just being himself, and somehow that was enough to make people forget about the guy who got drafted higher. The coaches noticed immediately. Receivers noticed even faster. There's a difference between a quarterback who can complete passes and a quarterback who makes everyone around him better. Gabriel completed passes. Shador elevated the entire offense just by being under center. Routes got sharper when he was throwing. Timing synced up naturally. Even the linemen seemed to block with more urgency, like they understood something important was happening and didn't want to mess it up. Meanwhile, Gabriel started pressing. You could see it in his footwork. The throws that used to come easy started sailing. The decisions that used to be automatic started taking an extra half-second. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious to casual observers, but the people who watch football for a living saw exactly what was happening. Pressure had entered the building, and it was wearing a Colorado jersey. The Browns wanted competition. They designed this situation hoping iron would sharpen iron. But what happens when one sword is clearly sharper from the jump? What happens when the developmental plan gets torn up before the first preseason game? Cleveland was about to find out, and the entire league was watching. Before Shador Sanders ever entered the conversation, Gabriel had already written a story worth respecting. This wasn't some overnight sensation. This was a grinder. A quarterback who got knocked down repeatedly and kept finding ways to stand back up. His journey started at UCF, where he showed flashes of brilliance before injuries derailed momentum. Then came the transfer portal, that chaotic marketplace where college quarterbacks reinvent themselves or disappear forever. Most guys who enter the portal once struggle to regain footing. Gabriel did it multiple times and came out stronger each time. UCLA gave him a chance to prove his arm still worked. He took it. Then Oregon came calling, offering a bigger stage and higher expectations. He took that too. By the time his college career ended, Gabriel had accumulated more experience than most quarterbacks twice his age. Different systems, different coaches, different teammates. He adapted to all of it. That adaptability became his calling card. Scouts loved his football intelligence, the way he processed information pre-snap, the way he adjusted protections at the line, the way he found secondary options when primary reads got taken away. He wasn't going to wow anyone with physical tools, but he wasn't going to lose games through mental mistakes either. Cleveland valued that steadiness. After years of watching quarterbacks make baffling decisions at the worst possible moments, Gabriel represented something refreshing: reliability, consistency, a floor you could trust while building the rest of the roster. The measurables weren't elite. Standing just over 6 feet, Gabriel fell below the traditional prototype that NFL teams obsess over. His arm strength graded out as average. His mobility helped him extend plays, but wouldn't make highlight reels. On paper, he looked like a solid backup with starter upside if everything broke right. But tape told a different story. Gabriel consistently outperformed his physical limitations through preparation and precision. He knew where defenders would be before they got there. He released the ball on time, trusting receivers to win their routes. He rarely forced throws into coverage, preferring checkdowns over interceptions. Smart, safe, dependable. Those words followed Gabriel everywhere he went. Walking into Cleveland, he carried legitimate confidence, not arrogance. Earned belief built through years of overcoming obstacles. He had outworked more talented quarterbacks before. He had won starting jobs through sheer determination. He expected this situation to follow the same script. The Browns had drafted him higher for a reason. The coaches talked about his maturity. The front office praised his readiness. Everything pointed toward Gabriel opening the season as the guy. Shador would learn behind him, develop at a reasonable pace, and eventually compete for the job down the road. That assumption made sense on draft night. It started crumbling the moment practice began. Gabriel's first few sessions went fine. Nothing spectacular. Nothing concerning. He completed the throws he was supposed to complete. He ran the offense the way coaches designed it. He looked exactly like what everyone expected. A competent quarterback executing a system. But competence doesn't generate excitement. Competence doesn't make receivers run faster after the catch. Competence doesn't fill the building with energy that makes everyone pay closer attention. Shador brought that energy without even trying. And suddenly Gabriel's steadiness started looking like a limitation instead of a strength. The comparison became unavoidable. Same drills, same receivers, same coaches watching, but completely different results depending on who was throwing. Gabriel would complete a pass, polite applause, next rep. Shador would complete the same pass with different velocity, different timing, different body language. Heads would turn, conversations would pause, something felt different. Gabriel noticed. Anyone paying attention could see it. His demeanor shifted slightly. Not anger, not panic, just awareness that the ground beneath him wasn't as solid as he thought. The starting job he assumed was his suddenly required proof he hadn't planned on providing. Reporters started asking uncomfortable questions. Fans started debating online. Teammates started giving those supportive comments that actually revealed doubt underneath. Everyone kept saying the right things publicly, but the energy told the real story. Gabriel came to Cleveland expecting a coronation. He found a cage match instead, and his opponent wasn't just fighting for a roster spot. Shador was fighting to rewrite an entire narrative that had followed him since childhood. That kind of motivation creates dangerous competitors. Gabriel had never faced anyone with that much to prove. His previous battles were against other overlooked guys clawing for opportunity. This was different. This was a guy with unlimited confidence backed by legitimate NFL arm talent. The pressure mounted daily. Every practice became an audition. Every throw carried extra weight. Gabriel kept grinding, kept showing up, kept doing everything right. But doing everything right wasn't enough anymore. He needed to be undeniable. And so far, the only undeniable presence in that quarterback room wasn't him. Before he ever threw a pass in Cleveland, Shador Sanders had already spent his entire life proving things to people who refused to believe him. Growing up as Deion Sanders' son meant living under a microscope that never turned off. Every accomplishment came with an asterisk. Every success triggered the same lazy question: would he even be here if his dad wasn't legendary? That doubt followed him from youth football to high school to college to the NFL draft. Most kids would have crumbled under that weight. Shador learned to carry it. Jackson State became his first real proving ground. Playing for his father invited endless criticism, nepotism, favoritism. The accusations never stopped, but Shador kept answering with performance. He threw for numbers that demanded attention. He led a program that had been forgotten back into national conversations. He made believers out of people who showed up expecting to confirm their doubts. Still, critics found angles. The competition level wasn't elite. The defenses weren't NFL caliber. Anyone could succeed in that environment with that much protection built around them. The goalpost kept moving no matter how many times he cleared it. Colorado was supposed to settle the argument. A Power 5 program, bigger stages, better opponents, real pressure. If Shador was truly a product of his father's system, this was where the fraud would be exposed. Instead, he elevated, not immediately. The first season had struggles. The offensive line leaked pressure constantly. The losses piled up, but Shador kept fighting, kept throwing, kept showing the kind of poise that doesn't get coached into quarterbacks. It's either there or it isn't. His was there. By his final season, the numbers demanded respect. Touchdowns accumulated. Interceptions stayed low. His arm strength silenced the doubters who claimed he couldn't push the ball downfield. His accuracy answered questions about whether he could consistently hit tight windows. The tape spoke clearly for anyone willing to actually watch it. But the conversation never fully shifted. Every preview segment still mentioned his father before mentioning his stats. Every analysis still included the family narrative before discussing his mechanics. Shador became the most dissected quarterback prospect in years, not because people cared about his game, but because his last name generated clicks. That constant doubt forged something inside him. Not bitterness, not resentment, just an unshakable certainty that words meant nothing and performance meant everything. He stopped arguing. He stopped explaining. He just showed up and let his arm do the talking. Cleveland drafting him later than Gabriel confirmed what he already knew. The league still doubted him. Teams still hesitated. The famous last name that supposedly opened every door actually kept some of them closed. Scouts couldn't separate Shador from Deion long enough to evaluate him fairly, but the Browns gave him a chance, a real one, and that was all he ever needed. From the first snap of training camp, Shador operated like a man with something to prove, but there was no desperation in his movements, no anxiety in his decisions. He played with the calm certainty of someone who had been preparing for this moment his entire life. The arm talent jumped off the field immediately. Throws that made coaches pause mid-sentence. Velocity that created separation even when receivers hadn't fully won their routes. Deep balls that landed softly in stride. Short passes that arrived before defenders could close. His release looked effortless. His footwork looked polished. His eyes looked like a veteran's, scanning coverages and finding weaknesses before the rush could arrive. But the most impressive part wasn't physical. It was the presence. Shador commanded attention without demanding it. Teammates gravitated toward his energy naturally. Receivers wanted to run routes for him because they trusted the ball would arrive on time. Even the veterans started watching his reps closer, recognizing something special was developing. Gabriel had the resume. Shador had the momentum. And momentum in an NFL quarterback competition often matters more than anything written on paper. The coaches tried to manage expectations publicly. Both quarterbacks were developing. Both had shown positive signs. No decisions had been made. The usual corporate answers that mean absolutely nothing. But inside the building, the reality was harder to hide. Something was happening that couldn't be scripted or planned. A quarterback who was supposed to sit and learn was instead making the expected starter look like the backup. Shador didn't celebrate these small victories publicly. He didn't post cryptic messages or throw shade at his competition. He just returned to practice the next day and did it again. And again. And again. Every rep widened the gap. Every throw added evidence. Every day brought the inevitable conversation closer to the surface. Cleveland wanted answers at quarterback. They might have found one faster than anyone expected, but that answer came with complications because the other quarterback wasn't going to disappear quietly, and the battle was just getting started. When training camp officially began, the Browns' coaching staff had already mapped out their development plan. On paper, it made perfect sense. In reality, it created more questions than answers. Gabriel received first-team reps immediately, working alongside veteran receivers. Facing the starting defense, getting the kind of exposure that traditionally signals organizational trust. He was being thrown into the fire, tested against the best the roster had to offer, trial by combat, sink or swim. Shador Sanders got a different assignment. Second and third team reps, controlled environments, structured situations designed to build confidence gradually without overwhelming a young quarterback too quickly. The coaches called it nurturing. Some reporters called it protection. Fans called it confusing. The logic seemed backwards to anyone watching. Gabriel, the more experienced college quarterback, supposedly needed less development time. Shador, the guy with the famous father and the massive spotlight experience, apparently needed training wheels. But maybe the coaches saw something the public didn't. Maybe they recognized that Gabriel's ceiling was already visible while Shador's was still being discovered. Maybe they wanted to protect their later investment from early failures that could damage confidence permanently. Or maybe they just didn't expect what happened next. Shador took those second-team reps and made them look like first-team reps. The receivers lining up with him weren't the starters, but they started playing like starters. Routes got crisper. Effort levels increased. Chemistry developed faster than anyone anticipated. Meanwhile, Gabriel faced the full weight of starting expectations. Every incompletion magnified, every hesitation noted, every slightly off throw analyzed frame by frame. He wasn't failing. He was just looking ordinary, and ordinary doesn't excite a fan base starving for extraordinary. The practice field became a tale of two experiences. Same facility, same weather, same drills, completely different vibes depending on which quarterback held the ball. Gabriel worked through progressions methodically. Check the first read. Move to the second. Find the safe option. Limit mistakes. Execute the system. It was solid. It was professional. It was exactly what coaches had expected. Shador worked through progressions differently. Same reads but faster. Same options but with more anticipation. He released balls before receivers finished breaking, trusting them to be where they were supposed to be. When they weren't, he adjusted mid-throw. When they were, the completions looked effortless. The tempo difference became impossible to ignore. Gabriel's drives felt methodical. Shador's drives felt electric. Same playbook, different executions. Coaches started having quiet conversations. Not panic, not wholesale changes, just adjustments, more reps for Sanders, harder looks for Gabriel. Evaluation windows expanding in ways the original plan hadn't anticipated. Receivers started talking among themselves. Nothing disrespectful, just observations. The ball comes out faster from Shador. The timing feels different. We don't have to wait as long. Those small comments spread through locker rooms quickly. Confidence is contagious, but so is doubt. And the whispers about which quarterback gave the offense better energy kept growing louder. Gabriel tried adjusting, pushing throws earlier, taking more chances, showing the coaching staff he could play with the same aggressive tempo, but forcing isn't the same as flowing. The extra effort showed. The results didn't match. By the end of the first week, the carefully designed development paths had already started blending together. Shador earned looks against better competition. Gabriel found himself sharing reps more than expected. The competition everyone assumed was settled began looking genuinely open. Media members attending practices started shifting their questions. Early interviews focused on Gabriel's leadership. Later interviews focused on Shador's potential. The storyline was writing itself regardless of what anyone officially announced. Inside the quarterback room, the dynamic shifted too. Gabriel remained vocal, tried to assert veteran presence despite being a rookie himself. Shador stayed quieter, let his reps speak instead of his words. Two completely different approaches to the same situation. The coaches praised both publicly. Gabriel's preparation, Shador's natural ability, both quarterbacks showing growth, both quarterbacks contributing. The diplomatic answers continued while the evidence mounted. Something had changed. The expected starter no longer felt expected. The developmental prospect no longer felt like a project. Two different paths had started merging toward the same destination, and only one quarterback could ultimately arrive. Cleveland's front office watched closely. This was exactly what they wanted when drafting two quarterbacks: competition, pressure, growth through adversity, but they also recognized the risk. Quarterback battles create divided locker rooms if managed poorly. The harmony had to hold even as the competition intensified. So far, both players handled the tension professionally. No public complaints, no passive-aggressive comments, just work. But the season hadn't started yet. The cameras weren't rolling for real games. The pressure was still theoretical. What would happen when actual wins and losses hung in the balance? When one quarterback sat watching the other lead the team? When the choice became permanent instead of fluid, Cleveland would find out soon enough. And based on everything camp had shown so far, the answer might surprise everyone who thought they already knew. There's a moment in every quarterback competition when the tide shifts permanently. It doesn't always happen dramatically. Sometimes it's a single throw. Sometimes it's a single decision. Sometimes it's just an accumulation of small moments that suddenly become undeniable. For Dillon Gabriel and Shador Sanders, that shift happened faster than anyone expected. It started with the receivers. Football players are honest even when they're trying to be diplomatic. They can say the right things in interviews while their body language tells the real story. And the receiver's body language started changing noticeably. With Gabriel throwing, routes looked functional, professional, executed correctly but without extra juice. Receivers ran their assignments, caught what was catchable, and moved to the next rep. Nothing wrong with it, nothing exciting about it either. With Shador throwing, something different happened. Routes got sharper, breaks got quicker, effort increased visibly. Receivers weren't just running assignments, they were competing for the ball. They wanted those catches, they trusted those throws. That difference matters more than stats show. Football is ultimately about belief. Do the guys around you believe you give them the best chance to succeed? That belief affects everything from blocking to route running to how hard someone fights for extra yards after the catch. Shador was building that belief one rep at a time. Gabriel was watching it develop from across the field. Then came the moment that crystallized everything. A rookie photo session. Simple team-building exercise. New players posing together for content. Normal stuff that happens at every training camp across the league. But when the rookies gathered for the picture, they didn't do a generic pose. They did Shador's pose, his signature, his brand, the wrist flip, the attitude, the swagger. Dillon Gabriel stood there watching his fellow rookies essentially declare their allegiance through body language. Nobody said anything offensive. Nobody insulted him directly. But the message landed clearly anyway. The cultural momentum belonged to Shador, not because he demanded it, because he earned it. That moment spread across social media within hours, screenshots everywhere, commentary flooding every Browns fan page. The narrative locked into place harder than any stat line could accomplish. One quarterback was becoming a movement, the other was becoming background noise. Gabriel tried staying above it. He focused on his work. He didn't acknowledge the photo publicly. He kept grinding through reps and meeting rooms and film sessions, all the things a professional quarterback should do. But you can't outwork momentum, and the momentum was accelerating in one direction. Coaches started giving Shador tougher looks, testing him against first-team defenders, putting him in pressure situations designed to expose weaknesses. He kept passing the tests, not perfectly, not every time, but enough to prove the early buzz wasn't accidental. The arm strength that skeptics questioned showed up repeatedly. Deep shots that covered distance effortlessly. Timing routes that arrived before defenders could close. Red zone throws into tight coverage that required both accuracy and velocity. Shador had both. Meanwhile, Gabriel's limitations became harder to overlook. The arm strength sat at average. The velocity couldn't match. Throws that Shador made look easy, Gabriel had to muscle through. Same plays, different ceilings. Fans watching practice clips online noticed immediately. Social media became an endless comparison reel. Every Shador throw got celebrated. Every Gabriel throw got scrutinized. The court of public opinion had already delivered its verdict, even if the coaches hadn't officially announced anything. That external pressure added internal stress. Gabriel couldn't escape the conversation. Every interview included questions about the competition. Every rep felt weighted with extra significance. The starting job he assumed was his now required daily defense. Shador handled the opposite situation with remarkable calm. He didn't celebrate the momentum publicly. He didn't take shots at his competition. He didn't demand anything from coaches or media. He just kept working. That composure made the momentum even stronger. Fans love confidence. Teammates love consistency. Coaches love low maintenance. Shador checked every box without appearing to try. The flip had happened. The question was no longer whether Shador could compete for the starting job. The question became whether Gabriel could find any path back to relevance. Every day that passed without Gabriel clearly outplaying Shador became another day the gap widened. Not through failure, through comparison. Gabriel was fine, Shador was special. Fine doesn't beat special in quarterback competitions. Cleveland's front office had to feel both excited and concerned. Excited because their later pick might be the franchise answer they desperately needed. Concerned because their earlier pick might become a very expensive backup before ever getting a real chance. The competition continued officially. Both quarterbacks still received meaningful reps. Both still heard their names in trade rumors and starting conversations. But the momentum told the real story. Something had flipped. And flipping it back would require more than hard work. It would require Gabriel to become someone he had never been before, a player who could match special with special. Time would tell if that version of Dillon Gabriel existed. Nobody talks about what it actually feels like to be outshined in real time. The public sees stats and highlights. They don't see the quiet moments when a competitor realizes the ground is shifting beneath him. Dillon Gabriel walked into Cleveland expecting a fight. He got one. But the fight looked different than he imagined. There was no villain to battle, no unfair circumstances to overcome. Just another quarterback doing the same job better, day after day, rep after rep. That kind of competition drains you in ways that don't show up on film. Every morning becomes a reset. Every practice becomes a proving ground. Every throw carries the weight of survival. You can't just be good, you have to be undeniable. And when your opponent keeps matching or exceeding whatever you bring, the pressure compounds. Cleveland made everything harder, not the city, not the fans, the history. This franchise had experienced quarterback pain that bordered on legendary, decades of failed experiments, promising talents who crumbled under expectations, free agent signings that flopped, draft picks that busted. Every Browns fan could name the ghosts by heart. They didn't need another cautionary tale. They needed salvation. That desperation added weight to every practice snap. Gabriel felt it. Shador felt it too, but differently. For Gabriel, the pressure whispered you better not fail. For Shador, it whispered prove everyone wrong. One of those pressures suffocates, the other motivates. Gabriel came from a background of being underestimated. He knew what grinding felt like. He understood adversity. But this adversity was different. Previous challenges had clear solutions. Outwork the competition, make smarter decisions, prepare more thoroughly than anyone else. Those solutions weren't working now. He was preparing thoroughly. He was making smart decisions. He was working harder than ever. And still, the gap wasn't closing. Shador's advantages weren't effort-based. They were ability-based. The arm, the poise, the natural timing, those gifts don't get taught in extra film sessions. They come pre-installed. Gabriel could work himself into exhaustion and still not match what Shador brought naturally. That realization creates its own kind of pressure. Helplessness mixed with determination. Knowing the odds are stacking against you while refusing to quit. The fan base made everything louder. Social media turned every practice day into a referendum. Highlight clips favored Shador overwhelmingly. Comment sections became battlegrounds. Supporters of each quarterback treated every post like tribal warfare. Defending Gabriel got you labeled as a hater of Shador. Praising Shador got you labeled as disloyal to the guy drafted higher. There was no neutral ground. Every fan had to choose sides. That external chaos filtered into the building. Players noticed the conversations. Coaches monitored the narratives. Everyone felt the temperature rising even though the games hadn't started yet. Gabriel's support system emphasized the usual mantras: control what you can control, trust the process, let the work speak for itself. Good advice in normal circumstances, less comforting when the process seems rigged toward someone else. Shador's support system emphasized different themes: stay humble, keep working. Let them doubt until they can't anymore. His entire life had prepared him for exactly this situation, being underestimated publicly while delivering privately. The pressure affected them differently. Gabriel tightened slightly. His natural rhythm seemed just a step slower. His throws sailed just a bit more, not dramatically, just enough to notice if you watched closely. Shador loosened. Each successful rep added confidence. Each completed throw confirmed what he already believed about himself. The spotlight didn't intimidate him because he had been in spotlights since childhood. This was just a bigger stage for the same performance. Teammates read those differences in energy. Players gravitate toward confidence during uncertain times. They seek stability when everything feels chaotic. Shador provided that stability just by being himself. Gabriel tried projecting confidence too. He said the right things. He showed up early and stayed late. He supported teammates vocally. All the leadership boxes got checked. But real leadership during quarterback battles comes from undeniable performance. Players don't follow effort, they follow results. And the results kept pointing toward Shador. The pressure cooker kept building temperature. Every day brought new comparisons. Every practice rep became evidence for one side or the other. Every media availability included questions designed to expose cracks in the facade. Neither quarterback cracked publicly. Both handled the situation professionally. Both avoided trashing each other or making excuses. Credit to both for maintaining composure under circumstances that would break lesser competitors. But privately, the pressure had to weigh differently. Gabriel faced the pressure of losing something he expected to have. Shador faced the pressure of seizing something everyone said he didn't deserve. Cleveland watched closely. The decision would come eventually. Somebody would be named the starter. Somebody would be relegated to backup duty. The pressure cooker wouldn't stay sealed forever. And when it finally opened, only one quarterback would emerge positioned to lead. The other would have to accept a new reality, no matter how much that reality hurt. Strip away the narratives. Ignore the social media noise. Forget the family names and the transfer histories and the draft position debates. What does the actual film show when you watch both quarterbacks perform? The answer isn't as close as Gabriel supporters want to believe. Start with arm strength. This matters at the NFL level in ways it doesn't always matter in college. Windows are tighter. Defenders are faster. Corners close on routes that would be wide open against college competition. You need the ability to zip balls into spaces that barely exist. Shador has that ability. His velocity consistently rates among the best in his quarterback class. Throws arrive before defenders can react. Deep balls cover distance without requiring receivers to slow down or adjust. Timing routes snap into hands exactly when they should. Gabriel's arm grades as average, not weak, functional, but against NFL-caliber defensive backs, average becomes a liability. Throws that worked in college require an extra half-second of anticipation at this level. That half-second sometimes doesn't exist. The film shows this difference repeatedly. Same routes, same receivers, different ball arrival times. Shador's throws beat coverage. Gabriel's throws race coverage. One creates easy completions. The other requires receivers to work harder for the same result. Next comes pocket presence. How does each quarterback process pressure? How quickly do they recognize when the rush is coming? How smoothly do they maneuver when protection breaks down? Shador moves like he sees the rush before it arrives. His feet stay active without being panicked. He slides away from pressure while keeping eyes downfield. He extends plays without turning them into disasters. When he does take off to run, the decision looks calculated rather than desperate. Gabriel shows more hesitation in the pocket, not dramatically more, just enough to notice. His internal clock runs slightly slower. He holds balls slightly longer. When pressure arrives, his movements seem reactive rather than anticipatory. Again, the difference isn't massive on any single play, but across a full game, those small differences accumulate. One quarterback makes the offense flow naturally. The other makes it work harder than necessary. Decision-making reveals similar gaps. Both quarterbacks process information adequately. Neither makes catastrophically bad choices that lead to obvious turnovers. Both understand offensive concepts and defensive coverages at a functional level. But Shador's decisions come faster and with more conviction. He trusts his reads and pulls the trigger. Gabriel double-checks his reads before throwing. Both approaches can work. One just plays faster. Speed matters in the NFL. Defenses scheme to confuse quarterbacks and create hesitation. The best quarterbacks don't hesitate. They process, decide, and deliver before the defense can adjust. Shador shows that processing speed consistently. Gabriel shows it occasionally. The deep ball comparison becomes particularly stark. This represents one of the most important throws in modern NFL offenses. The ability to push the ball 40-plus yards accurately creates opportunities that short passing games cannot replicate. Shador's deep ball lands softly in stride. Receivers don't have to slow down. They don't have to adjust their routes. They just run and catch. The timing looks professional. The results look easy. Gabriel's deep ball requires more effort from receivers. Sometimes they have to wait for it. Sometimes they have to adjust angles. Sometimes the coverage has time to recover. Completions still happen, but they look harder. Red zone efficiency tells another story. Compressed fields mean tighter windows. There's less room for error when throwing into end zone coverage. Arm strength and accuracy both matter more. Shador fits balls into spaces that barely exist. His velocity creates separation even in tight coverage. His timing allows receivers to catch and score before defenders can challenge. Gabriel's red zone work appears more methodical. He finds open targets when they exist. He struggles more when coverage tightens. His arm can't force balls into windows that require extra velocity. The film doesn't lie. It shows two quarterbacks with different ceilings. Gabriel's ceiling looks like a capable starter who can manage games and limit mistakes. Shador's ceiling looks like a franchise centerpiece who can win games through arm talent alone. Ceilings don't guarantee outcomes. Plenty of high-ceiling quarterbacks busted for various reasons. Plenty of lower-ceiling guys maximize their abilities through preparation and intelligence. But if you're choosing a quarterback to build a franchise around, you want the highest ceiling available. You want the guy who can make throws that change games. You want the arm that scares defensive coordinators. Right now, only one quarterback in Cleveland fits that description. The film shows it clearly. The coaches see it clearly. The only remaining question is how long until the public announcement matches what the evaluation already revealed. Gabriel can still compete. Development happens. Growth occurs. Surprises emerge. But based purely on what the film shows today, the momentum Shador built during camp wasn't accidental. It was earned through ability that Gabriel simply doesn't possess at the same level. Training camp eventually ends. Practices stop being the main event. Real games with real stakes and real consequences take over. That's when everything changes. Right now, the quarterback competition exists in a controlled environment. Coaches design situations. Reps get distributed according to plan. Nobody's job disappears overnight based on one bad throw. There's room for growth, adjustment, and evaluation. Once the season starts, that room vanishes. Somebody leads the team onto the field. Somebody stands on the sideline holding a clipboard. The starter gets opportunities to build momentum. The backup gets opportunities to watch and wait. For Dylan Gabriel, the path forward narrows significantly. If Shador wins the starting job outright, Gabriel becomes an expensive insurance policy. A high draft pick reduced to hoping for injury or failure to get meaningful snaps. That's not the role he envisioned when he joined Cleveland. Could he request a trade? Possibly. Teams always need quarterback depth. His college experience and draft pedigree would attract interest from franchises looking for developmental options. But leaving Cleveland means admitting defeat. It means acknowledging that this competition was never really a competition at all. Alternatively, Gabriel could embrace the backup role and wait. Prepare like a starter. Stay ready for opportunity. Hope that circumstances change. Plenty of quarterbacks have waited years before getting their chance. Patience sometimes pays off. But patience requires accepting a truth that hurts. Accepting that right now, in this moment, someone else is simply better. For a competitor who fought through transfers and doubters and obstacles to reach this point, that acceptance doesn't come easily. For Shador Sanders, the path forward opens wide if he wins the job. Cleveland becomes his stage. The franchise builds around his timeline. Every win adds evidence that the doubters were wrong. Every successful throw buries another piece of the narrative that haunted him for years, but winning the job comes with its own pressure. Expectations skyrocket once you're the guy. Patience evaporates. Struggles that would be forgiven for a backup become magnified for a starter. Every interception gets analyzed. Every loss gets blamed on decisions made under center. Shador has handled pressure before. His entire life prepared him for scrutiny. But NFL pressure operates on different levels. The hits are harder. The defenses are smarter. The margin for error shrinks dramatically. Can he deliver when games count? Can he perform when film sessions reveal his tendencies to opposing coordinators? Can he stay healthy behind an offensive line that will face real pass rushers instead of practice squad participants? Those questions don't have answers yet. They won't have answers until real games provide real data. The Browns' coaching staff faces decisions that extend beyond this season. How they handle this competition sends messages to future players about how opportunity works in Cleveland. If Shador wins based on merit, that tells the locker room that performance matters more than draft position. If Gabriel gets extra chances based on investment, that tells a different story. Right now, the organization seems committed to letting the competition play out fairly. Both quarterbacks receive meaningful opportunities. Both get evaluated based on results rather than expectations. That's healthy for the long-term culture, but eventually, choices have to be made. Depth charts have to be finalized. Somebody's name goes at the top. Somebody's name falls below. Fans will react either way. If Shador starts, his supporters will celebrate vindication. His critics will wait for failure to prove they were right all along. The pressure never stops no matter which side of the debate you occupy. If Gabriel somehow wins the job, the conversation becomes about what Shador needs to develop. Or it becomes about whether the coaches played it safe instead of betting on upside. Neither narrative ends cleanly. The only certainty is that Cleveland will continue watching closely. This city has invested too much emotional energy into quarterback searches to stop caring now. Every snap this season will be measured against expectations. Every decision will be debated endlessly. Shador and Gabriel both understand what they signed up for. Neither entered this situation expecting it to be easy. Both came ready to compete. Both believed they could win, but only one of them can actually win. And based on everything training camp revealed, the outcome seems increasingly clear, even if nobody wants to say it out loud yet. Cleveland might finally have their franchise quarterback. He might not be the one they expected. He might have arrived through controversy and doubt and a last name that generated more criticism than praise. But he might also be exactly what this city needed. A competitor who refuses to back down. A talent who keeps improving under pressure. A quarterback who makes everyone around him better just by being present. Time will tell the full story. For now, the competition continues. At least officially. Unofficially, the answer might already be written. Cleveland wanted answers at quarterback. They got something more complicated. They got a competition that stopped being competitive before the first preseason game even kicked off. Dillon Gabriel came in expecting to lead. He found himself chasing momentum that kept accelerating away from him, not through any failure on his part, just through someone else being undeniably better in ways that hard work couldn't overcome. Shador Sanders came in with something to prove. He proved it, every rep. Every throw, every decision confirmed what his believers always saw and forced his doubters to reconsider. The drama isn't finished. Seasons bring surprises. Injuries happen. Performances fluctuate. Nothing is guaranteed until the final whistle of the final game. But right now, in this moment, the story has a clear direction. Cleveland might have found their franchise quarterback. He just wasn't the one they drafted first. And maybe that's the most Cleveland thing possible. The answer arriving unexpectedly. Hope emerging from chaos. A future worth believing in built on the back of a kid everyone said didn't deserve to be here. He's here now, and he looks ready. What happens next will define more than a season. It might define a generation of Browns football.